Hey everybody, this is Tom from Rocket Restorations again, and today what I wanted to go through is something that's very near and dear to my heart and something that I think is very, very cool, and I hope you guys will appreciate this too. So one of my real passions in this hobby is trying to reunite paperwork with cars. Whether it's fender tags or broadcast sheets, guys like Galen Govier and Barry Washington have been doing this for years, and when they collect like fender tags and broadcast sheets, like people send them stuff and they try to reunite them. Um, you know, but what I've tried to do is find original dealer paperwork, like actually like go to dealerships and that were open back in the day and try to find the paperwork and try to reunite with cars. We've had a couple hits the last couple of years. I mean, the hit rate isn't super high on this stuff. Most of these cars are gone, but I think it's fascinating to see how cars were ordered back in the day. Like, everybody always assumes, oh, there were 20 Roadrunners a year. Well, it's 20 Valiants and, one Roadrunner. So one example, we're going to go through a 1970 Roadrunner, and I'm going to run you through like what all the secret dealer paperwork was. Like, this is all the stuff that the dealer got that the customer didn't see. So like what they're paying for stuff, the order forms. I think it's real interesting stuff, and I'll go in some background and kind of how I found this stuff too. But so I'm not gonna bury the lead here. We're gonna go through the paperwork. So this is a folder from Martinez, California. The dealership was Duarte and Whitting. A friend of mine, as far as I know, I think the building's still there. In fact, they still have a sign up front. But a buddy of mine bought out all the NOS parts like 20, 25 years ago. And one of the things he found up in the attic was all their old dealer records. And it's a folder for pretty much every car they sold. I think it goes from like 58 to like the mid 70s. And I've gone through a lot of this paperwork and like posted online. So most of the VINs are out there for this stuff. So, if you know your car was sold at Duarte and Whitting in Martinez, California, let me know. I probably have the paperwork, but like I said, the hit rate isn't high on this, but in this particular paperwork, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mopar's 5150. They're pretty good at finding cars, or big on Instagram, but they posted a 67 Barracuda on Facebook a couple years ago, Facebook Marketplace, and it actually had a Duarte and Whitting dealer badge on it. And I kind of figured like, hey, I bet this is the car. So had him send me the VIN and actually found the paperwork and sent it back to him. We had another dealer in Iowa that went back on one of our trips last year, and they actually sold a 70 Hemi Cuda new. And when we found the paperwork, the car was a known car. Like there was information on it out there, but apparently it was in a barn for like 30 years. And then really nice guy in Detroit ended up with it, and we ended up reading the paperwork with that too. So, but yeah, we're gonna go over a 70 Roadrunner here. I said the VIN's posted online, but if anybody happens to own a 70 Roadrunner with this VIN number, kind of what I do with this stuff is it's pretty much free to owners. Sometimes I do have to pay for this stuff. I just ask from try to get my money back on it. If I had to pay a couple $100, that's what I asked from the customers. But for what they're getting is this stuff's pretty valuable. So, but yeah, let's go through the 70 Roadrunner, and I just think this is really fascinating stuff. And we are going to block out the original owner's information. We try to keep this stuff as private as we can, but most stuff I'm going to show you is just VIN numbers and stuff like that. So it's just kind of generic information, but I think it's really fascinating. So, all right, here we go. All right, so first thing I want to show you here is this is what the folder looks like. So, and this is kind of this isn't like a Chrysler specific thing, but a lot of dealers back in the day, I've seen these folders a lot of dealers, and they basically were just their inventory. So, they had new cars and used cars. So it was NC for new car, 70 was the year, and then that was the fifth car they got in. And this particular car is a 1970 Plymouth Road Runner. They put the year down, Plymouth, 8s for V8, Roadrunner, Tudor hardtop. There's the VIN, RM23 NOG 106866. Pretty early car. My guess is this was probably one of their initial orders at the start of the year. It may have been a dealer demonstrator or something like that. It's hard to tell. But But the thing is, one thing that makes me think about that, or sometimes dealers order these like they're the owners would drive them, or the salesman would drive them, or the kid of the owner would drive them, or something like that. But if you notice, so date of purchase was 9/4/69, but it didn't sell till November, so it sat around for a long time. So the 1970 model year was September to July-ish. And then in August they started up the 71 production. So the fact that this sold around Thanksgiving in 1970 means that was like 3 months, 4 months into the 1971 model year. So this thing sat on the lot for a while. And the next piece of info here is, so this is kind of their handwritten receipt. So basically they just get the inventory number on it, the date they sold it, 1970 Road Runner, the VIN, it was a lemon twist car. The trade-in, which is kind of cool, was a 1967 Ford Mustang. If you know your California black plates, that was the black plates on the car. Actually, that was probably the plates. AEN would be, so that's when the blue plates came out. So that probably was the original plates on that Road Runner, which is kind of cool. Here's all the prices they did. There was a pretty, 38, 69, 40 was the MSRP, but they had a pretty deep discount on it. I mean, again, the thing was sitting for 3 or 4 months, so I don't know what the mileage was, but it sat on that lot for a very long time, so they had to discount it. And then there's tax and fees and cash deliver price, and they got a $900 trade on that 67 Mustang, so that's kind of neat. So the next bit of paperwork we have here is the window sticker, or the Monroney label is the proper name is it for. So these were basically stuck in the window of a car when it went, after it was left the assembly line. And then this listed basically all the options that you had to pay for on this. And, it's a pretty well optioned car actually. So let me kind of go through the sheet here. So St. Louis Assembly, so that's the plant it was built at. VIN numbers right there. We went through that earlier. So R is Plymouth B body, M is Road Runner, 23 is 2-door hardtop, N is 383 4-barrel, 0 is the model year, 1970, G is plant, St. Louis, and 106866 is the last of the VIN. 818 is the scheduled production date, and we'll go back to that in a second. GR is G is the plant, R is the first letter of the VIN, Road Runner, and that's the vehicle order number, and that's the unique number that Chrysler used internally for every car. So they didn't really care about the VIN. This is the number they used internally. Color code is Y1, and that means it's FY1, which is Lemon Twist, that real bright yellow. If it had a vinyl top, it'd be like 1X, or the other code would be behind it. This didn't have it. Interior was tan bench seat, which again, that's kind of an unusual color combo. I mean, tan wasn't super unusual with yellow, but it's definitely an interesting color combo. It's a little bit different. That's the dealer code. And interesting part about this one is, if a dealer code start with 0, that generally means they were generated pre-50s. So that means the dealership was around there for a long time. 73 is the region, which is California. And then ship to, so Duarte and Whitting, their address, the zip code. Then here's all the info of the car. So RM23, the Road Runner. This lists all the standard stuff of the Road Runner, which is a bunch of stuff. Vinyl trim, 334 barrel was standard, white oval, white wall tires, heavy duty suspension, shock absorbers, heavy duty brakes, 3-speed windshield wipers, 3-speed manual 4-shift transmission. Because remember, 4-speed was not standard on these. They made you pay for that. And then of course the automatic was an upgrade too. Rally style instrument panels. They got the Charger dash. In 70 they did not before that, but in 70 they did. The transverse tape stripe and decar group. So on a little note on that, the decar group is some moldings and some other upgrades, and every Road Runner hardtop got that. The postcars did not. I actually had a postcar one time. The decar package got you the chrome on the B-pillar post. I actually had a 70 Road Runner one time, a Limelight car that actually didn't have the chrome there. It was a non-decor postcar, but extremely rare to see that. And then MSRP price. This had the torque flight, because that was extra, $227.05. The 383 was standard, so it's not extra money there. The FY1 high impact paint, Lemon Twist, that was an extra cost option for the paint. It was $14.05. This had a tinned windshield only, which was $25.90, which is actually quite a bit for a tinted windshield, but in California, it's not a bad idea to have a tinted windshield. Generally, if you had AC, you got tinted all windows, but this is a non-AC car. G33 remote control mirror left outside, that was $10.45. This had factory undercoating on it, $16.60. Had the door edge protectors, which again, kind of an unusual option. You don't see that on a Road Runner very much. That was a pretty cheap $4.65. Dealers usually carry those in stock too, and they would just put them on to inflate the MSRP a little bit. M25 is rocker moldings, which again, pretty unusual on a Road Runner. You don't see that very often. That was $21.15. The belt moldings, belt line, $13.60. Again, not super usual on a Road Runner. Rear bumper guards, $16. This is a lot of just small options that add up pretty quick. You don't see in a Road Runner very much. N95 was California emissions. That was $37.85. That was, you had to have that in California. R11 is radio, $61.55 with a rear seat speaker, power steering. I had V88, which is the stripe delete. So that was the back stripe, which was standard on a Road Runner. You didn't have to pay for it, but they deleted on this. You didn't get a credit or anything. W11's the deluxe wheel covers. That's pretty much just the cheap, hubcaps. Road Runner with hubcaps. Everybody thinks they all came with rally wheels, but they did not. F7014 white wall. That was the I think the raised white letter was actually the standard, but the white wall was no cost option. So, and then destination charge $153. It's going to California, so it's pretty expensive. Another interesting thing, it was not coated for vinyl top, but it was put on at the dealer. So, maybe the customer wanted it, who knows? But it's something that they put on at the dealer. It was not part of the, factory paperwork. So that was definitely added at some point. So, so I mentioned the SPD earlier. This is kind of an interesting thing on Monroney labels that most people don't know. So the SPD is 8/18. So that's the date it was scheduled to be built. Well, these cars were never built in order. Some were built late, some were built early. So the 9/19 right here, that's actually the date that this window sticker was printed. And that's interesting because, it's way later. But they did on some early cars sometimes. I've seen this happen where like the super early cars, they didn't have prices set yet, so they would print another label. So that's not necessarily the day it left the factory, but that's the day the window sticker or Monroney label is actually printed. So this car was either built really late, or they printed the window sticker later when they had the prices finalized. But either or, because this car, yeah, they said they purchased it on 9/4. So my guess is this is probably a Monroney label that they printed after the car was built. So so it's kind of hard to tell on that. But I got more paperwork that gives you a little more of the story here in a minute. All right, more interesting paperwork. So this is the new car pre-delivery inspection. So they were supposed to go through and, there's a huge list of stuff they had to check before the car was delivered. They wanted to make sure the factory didn't make any mistakes on it. And they just kind of have the basic info on here. So the VIN, there's the SO, so the SPD and vehicle order number, paint, interior code. They didn't actually check this off, but they had to go through on every car and do it. And then here's the actual receipt, to Duarte and Whitting, to themselves basically, because they had to account for this. So they charged for plate frames. I think that's hilarious. So the frames that they put on their car to advertise their cars, they charged for that, which is hilarious to me. And then it was $36 for the service for delivery. And this is dated 22 September 69. So my guess is that's probably when it arrived at the dealer. But I said, I actually have the convoy receipt that has that date. So we'll look at that next. So this is another piece of paperwork that I just find absolutely fascinating. So this is the actual convoy receipt. So when the cars were shipped, you never see this stuff. Like, unless you have like original dealer paperwork, you never see this stuff. Like, you don't see this. This is stuff that just went to the dealers. It didn't go to the owners. But this is interesting. Like, my favorite part is all the notes here. So like, I've seen a lot of these over the years, and like, oh, they came in with scratches, or they're missing 2 trim rings, or the The wheels didn't match on either side. Like, I've seen everything on this. But it seemed like whoever did the convoys for Duarte, for Chrysler, they just always say, too dirty to inspect later. So they basically kick the can down the road for the dealership to do it, which I think is funny. So it was commercial carriers, Romulus. I'm sure that was on a train. They're in Detroit, but obviously this is built to St. Louis, so it probably went on a different one. But here's the route numbers for the train. I'm sure someone can, figure all that out if they did some research. I'm pretty sure most of that information's out there. So it says 825 on there. So my guess is that's the date it left the factory. So again, when I showed that 919 on the Monroney label, that wasn't when it was built. That was, probably after the prices were firmed up. But again, the number here, 818 with the vehicle order number. I don't know what the 1340 is. And it was delivered on 9/4. So probably left St. Louis on 825 and was delivered to Duarte on 9/4/69. And again, having a Road Runner and high impact paint, my guess is they probably bought this to bring showroom traffic, and maybe the salesman drove it or maybe the owner drove it. Cars don't usually sit around for a year and a half unless there's a pretty good reason for it. But this is one of those very unique pieces of paper that you don't see very often, unless you can get into, you have all the records from a dealership. All right, the next piece. So this, in my opinion, is the coolest piece of paperwork you can get for a car. So this is how you ordered a car in 1970. Like, everybody always asks, like, hey, how do you order a car? This is it. This is the 1970 model year Belvedere order form. This is all the stuff. This is what the dealer filled out to order your car. So if it was a sales bank car, obviously Chrysler built it. But if you made an ordered car, this is how you ordered it. And you might be asking what that number is in the top corner. That is the vehicle order number. So on the fender tag, on the second line on the very right, there's that 6-digit code. And a lot of people always wonder, well, what does that mean? It's from the order form. So if you had a sales bank car that was, and sales bank means ordered by Chrysler, not by a dealer, it would be a Chrysler generated number. But if it was ordered by a dealership, that vehicle order number is the number that's on the fender tag. It's on the Monroney label. It's on the invoice. Like, that's the internal number for Chrysler to build the car. And I apologize, the writing's not very good. Even in person, it's hard to read. So I'll try to kind of translate this for you. But as I said, these sheets are so cool. Like, you just don't see these very often. So that's from like their warranty card. So they would just like had like a credit card machine. They would just slide it with their info on it. It would fill out all that automatically. So that's their dealer number, region number, district, the date it was ordered, all that stuff there. So actually says 10. Oh, so interesting. So they ordered this on 6/20/69. So they hadn't even started building the cars yet. And it's my theory, I've had this backed up by a lot of evidence, but the initial model orders, so they would build the cars out early, and then they would have a dealer reveal show. So they'd have like at whatever the regional office was, which is probably San Francisco for Duarte. It's the Bay Area. So all the dealers would get together and go to, the regional office to see the new models. And then what they would do is the dealers would get a pad of order forms to order their new cars at the start of the year. So I'm sure this was probably ordered at that point. And then you can kind of break down all the codes here. So, RM23, Torque Flight, white wall tires, the T83s, the tire choice, all the way the 426 Hemi, the, 6-barrel Plymouth, all the different orders here. The trim numbers, the stripes, so V8's for delete, V5Y is for the dust trail down the side, single tone paint, FY1. And I've seen tons of mistakes on these, which are pretty entertaining to see. So AM radio, sold car, power steering, N97 is for noise reduction, which is interesting because I thought it says on here it's only for 440 or Hemi cars, but they actually ordered it on this car, which didn't show up on the label, but it's on the adsn, which I'll get to in a minute here. So they did not order air grabber hood, undercoating, California emissions, W11, the deluxe wheel covers, C21, so it's That's interesting. See, that's a mistake because they ordered a bench seat interior, but they ordered the buddy seat. Can't do that unless you had buckets. So that's actually a mistake on here. So that Chrysler probably, you know, told them, well, you can't do that. So they didn't do it. G33 is remote mirror, rear bumper guards, belt moldings, rocker moldings, and again, the door moldings, tinted windshield. Again, this makes a lot of sense. You know, if a dealer's ordering at the start of the year for, you know, inventory for their stock, like it makes a lot of sense for them to order all that bling on there because they wanted a car that would really stand out on the showroom floor. So, yeah, so these are basically the factory order form, and then every model car had a different one. So the Barracuda had one, and you know, Coronet had one, and you know, Valiant had one, which included dusters. But yeah, I've always found these very, very interesting. Like, you know, just imagine yourself in 1969, 1970 going to the dealership and ordering your brand new Road Runner, and you know, how would you order yours from this? You know, I'd love to hear you guys' feedback on that because this is kind of like fantasy time, you know. So okay, so now a couple more pieces of paperwork here, and all right, so last piece of paperwork here. So we have 2 invoices and what's called the adsn, which is the Advanced Dealer Shipping Notice. So basically what this is this shows you the factory wholesale price. So remember on the window sticker, the MSRP was like $3,800. Well, the cost, the wholesale cost of the dealer was $3,205.76. So they were basically making $600 on the car, you know, depending on what they, you know, got for it. So, you know, sometimes they, you know, they would discount or try to get a little bit more, you know, just the same as now. But basically when the car was built, Chrysler sent this notice to the dealership to tell them what the price was and the options, and then make sure they ordered it right too. I've definitely seen some where they've sent this out and they're like, oh, well, you ordered it wrong. And it said there's a bunch of discrepancies on here. Like, you know, the order form we just looked at had T83 for the tire code, but it was T86, which was the white walls. I'm actually not sure what T83 was. I have to look at that. This is also a very early sheet. So it was printed, you know, probably before prices were completely firmed up. So it says tentative, you know, subject to change. You can see on these other ones here, these are actual invoices. And they're all like lettered up and like, so they had a Chrysler holdback, and, you know, EH&O was the holdback. You know, the wholesale price on a Road Runner, like no options, was $2,300. Like, it's pretty cheap. Like, you know, this was adjusted on 8/22 for different prices. You know, they updated stuff as the cars came out. You know, here's the floor plan cost. So I believe this was the cost of the dealer right here. So you ever heard of what a floor plan is that was basically the dealers would borrow money to have cars on the floor, and that's what it was called. It was basically the loan for new cars. So I'm sure that was probably their cost on that. And then the holdback was 71. I can't remember what the holdback is. I think that's like it's one of their margins from Chrysler. And they had like the difference and all that. So this is like their internal notes. But again, this is kind of like the secret Chrysler paperwork. Like, this is not stuff you ever see. The dealer did not want you to see this stuff. They did not want to know how much you paid for this. You know, because they're basically trying to extract as much money as they can from you, basically. So, yeah. So let me show you kind of my stash of other paperwork I have too. I think you guys might find this interesting. So this is kind of my stash of paperwork. So here's all the Duarte and Whitting stuff. So this is all the 1970 stuff. Again, I've posted most of the stuff online, but you know, here's a Grand Coupe Barracuda, pretty early car. You know, Duarte and Whitting. I've got, you know, that's another dealer from Idaho down there. It's like their checkbooks and stuff. Again, I just find this stuff really interesting. You know, here's more from another dealer. You know, we've got a bunch of dealers. You know, there's a handwritten notebook from a dealer in Kansas we got. There's one from Iowa we just got that had the Hemi Cuda in it. But yeah, I mean, this is the stuff we save. You know, we try to preserve this stuff, and then we try to put it into, you know, Excel spreadsheets, and get it all online. So, you know, if somebody finds the car, somebody has a car out there, they can reunite the paperwork. You know, even if there's a dealership that, you know, doesn't want to give it the paperwork, which I understand, you know, it's like, this is part of their history, but we try to go through and take pictures of it So at least we have a record of it. And then if we come across the car, we can reunite it. So yeah, in the bottom of this Road Runner file, you know, they have like even like the, you know, they were adding up all the stuff on a machine and adding it all up. And I don't even know, I think that's the dealer cost. And, you know, they had all this accounting stuff they had to keep track of. So, well, I hope you enjoyed this. As I said, I really find this stuff very interesting. I just think it's really cool information, and, you know, it's history of cars, it's history of Chryslers, it's stuff you don't see very often. And, you know, we find this stuff everywhere. You know, sometimes it finds us. You know, I actually have an old Chrysler dealer list from 1970. So we travel the country going to shows a lot of times. And so we'll just kind of travel the country and try to find this old stuff. So if you got any like old fender tags laying around, any old broadcast sheets, we collect that stuff. And I really try to share this with the world too. Unfortunately, some of the guys who collect this stuff, they don't share it. Like, it just goes into their archives and no one ever sees it again. And I'm a real proponent. You know, obviously there's privacy issues. I try not to post names or addresses or any of that stuff, but like, there's a lot of people out there who have registries. I really try to share this stuff with them. So I'll do my best to do it. I mean, I'm not going to go through, like, if somebody has a 70 Road Runner registry, I'll give them the VIN, I'll give them the information. I don't have time to go through and scan everything for every request, but, you know, but I just think it's really cool reuniting paperwork with cars. I just think it's really cool. So if you guys know where any of this stuff is out there, I'd love to hear it. As I said, I collect this stuff. I try to reunite it if I can. You know, post the VINs online. You know, there's a lot of other guys doing this too. You know, one dealership we went to in Kansas last year, our buddy Bob, his family owned the dealership for a long time, and they had all their stuff, and he's done a ton of work, like trying to reunite paperwork. He's actually done a few cars, which is great. And again, it was another dealership where it's like, well, he didn't want to give me the records, which I understand. I mean, they're from his dealership, like, it's the history. But he let me go through and take pictures of all of it. So I have all that in my registries so I can keep track of all that stuff. So, but yeah, I hope all you guys like this video. If you want to see more of this stuff, I would be happy to show a few more cars and decodes and everything. And, you know, give me some feedback of what you guys want to see on this stuff. Because, you know, sometimes stuff I find fascinating, people don't really care about at all. So, you know, that's kind of the way the world works. But we're always on the hunt for this stuff. We love finding it. You know, I love seeing how this stuff was ordered and built. And in fact, here, I'll show you, I'm going to show you one more thing real quick. So when we go through and get like a dealership's record, so this is all from a dealership in Idaho. So they've been in business since the 20s. Like, they were one of the first Dodge dealers actually back in the day, and they're still in business the same location, which is super cool. You just don't see that. There aren't too many left like that. But what we do is we go through and enter everything into a file, so we have a record of all of it. And then what I do is I post them online, and there's a group on Facebook, Mopar fender tags, that I'm on a lot, that people just post fender tags. So I usually post it on there, and I think guys who have registries have them. But it's just kind of interesting, you know. It's like I was saying at the start, like, oh, they didn't order that many performance cars, but some dealers did. I mean, they ordered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Valiants, Dusters, and, you know, 3 of them were 340 cars. So the H is 340, you know, slant 6, 318, 318. 340, 340, 318, and a 4-door Valiant. You know, there are a few Road Runners. I mean, there's 4 or 5 Road Runners there, and satellites, and I don't know if you know VINs very well, but, you know, some Challengers. There's a real early Barracuda. I mean, they had the Barracuda that was number 28th off the line at the LA plant, which is super cool. So it's just interesting to see how cars are ordered back in the day, because, you know, the survival rate on cars like this is like 5%. It's a little higher on the performance models, but, like, you know, of all the cars on the sheet, you know, Charger RT, Super B, you know, Road Runners, and 340 Darts, and 340 Cudas, and 440 4-barrel Challenger, like, you know, there's probably 2 or 3 cars on this list that still exist. And unfortunately, Chrysler does not have records. They have pre-67. They don't have anything past that. So, like, finding the records of this stuff is the only record of these cars that are left. You know, most of these cars have gone through a wrecking yard and been crushed years ago. So this is the only record left of the cars. So even if I can't reunite the paperwork of these cars, it fills in the puzzle of how Chrysler built stuff. You know, the vehicle order numbers and all that stuff. Like, it all tells a story. And again, I know I've said this a million times in the video, and I apologize. I tend to repeat myself a little bit on this stuff and have a few ticks, but I just find it fascinating. I think it's super, super interesting. I love going through this paperwork, seeing how Chrysler built cars, seeing how they sold them, seeing, you know, what they ordered and what they didn't order, you know, certain dealers. You know, we found one dealer, you know, local to us in Shelton, and, you know, in 1970 they ordered like 30 cars, and they had one 4-barrel. They had a 383 4-barrel 70 Charger. Every other car was a, you know, Slant 6 or 318, and like 3/4 of the car were either green with gold interior or gold with green interior. You know, that dealer did not believe in performance cars. This one did. They sold quite a few performance cars back in the day. They even sold the, you know, A12 Road Runner in 1969 that is not in the A12 registry. So, but again, I really hope you guys like this. So I'd love to have some feedback on this stuff. Let me know what you guys think. If you want to see more, I'd be more than willing to go through another one of these packets if people find it interesting. Really appreciate y'all watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.